Tonight, we step into a soul wrapped thick in the mist of history, Joanna I, the breathtaking Queen of Naples, whose name has forever been linked to the label of husband killer. Yet beneath the tangled webs of political intrigue, betrayal, and four marriages lies the lonely, unyielding struggle of a woman fighting alone. Let us lean into the soft glow of the flickering fire, and listen to this old story that needs no great effort to remember. Some truths lose their shape in the pages of history, but in the quiet of night, they return to their true colors. The story of Joanna I is one of power, desire, and the cruel sacrifice of personal freedom. From the winds of the Mediterranean to the cold, shadowed stone chambers, we will relive the Queen's most authentic life. Close your eyes, and in this slow, gentle narration, feel the dark, restrained beauty of a medieval court. If you have ever wondered at the moonlight over Naples, you might just hear the quiet sigh of Joanna I. She was a darling of power, yet also its prisoner, trapped her entire life in four empty, loveless marriages. In this 50-minute tale, there is no noise or chaos, only the soft, lingering warmth of history flowing slowly onward. May the legendary life of Joanna I carry you into a calm, deep, and peaceful dream. Along the sapphire-bright coastline of Naples stands an ancient castle that has watched over countless secrets. A beautiful woman stands upon its terrace. The sea wind before her ought to carry away the heat of the day, yet it only tangles the heavy, ornate crown upon her head. She is Joanna I, the rightful heir to Naples, but in that moment, all the world called her was husband killer. Tonight, by the soft, dancing fire, we will enter her real life through this story that needs no strenuous memorizing. A queen who should have basked in the Mediterranean sun was instead crushed, night after night, by the suffocating shadows of political scheming. Her first husband died in mysterious circumstances on that thunderous night. Was it her choice, or a cruel twist of fate? Afterward, she endured 3 more marriages, where the pure white of every wedding gown could never hide the bloodstains beneath the throne. Now, slow your breath. We begin gently, from the very moment that sealed her lifelong tragedy. In the deep darkness of September 1345, inside a monastery in Aversa, the air hung thick and oppressively hot. Joanna I was only 19 years old. She and her first husband, Andrew, were traveling in the faint hope of easing the cold distance that had grown between them. Andrew was descended from the Hungarian royal family, but he had never truly earned respect in this city, not even from Joanna herself. Then a terrible, piercing scream cut through the silence. Andrew was found dead on the grass below the window, a golden silken cord wrapped tight around his neck. Joanna was in the very next room. Her pale, unnaturally calm expression sent shockwaves through every royal court across Europe. The King of Hungary, Andrew's brother, swore vengeance, and his army advanced south like a gathering storm cloud. Joanna did not weep. She did not even display the kind of overwhelming grief the world expected at his funeral. This restraint was interpreted as cruelty, condemned by the church as immoral. Yet she only fell silent, and placed an even heavier crown upon her head. It was the first violent shattering of her fate. From that night onward, she was no longer the carefree princess of the House of Anjou. She had to defend her only, and heaviest, possession, the throne of Naples, against a flood of rumors and accusations, and the real danger had only just begun, a hunger for power that ran deep in her blood, in the very bones of her family. To resist the furious revenge of the Hungarians, Joanna I was forced to seek a new kind of protection. Even if the price was her own freedom, she chose her cousin Louis, a man equally ambitious and cold-hearted. This was no real marriage. It was a desperate, calculating pact between 2 drowning souls, clinging to one another only to survive. Louis did not love Joanna. He loved only the heavy, golden crown of the House of Anjou that rested upon her head. He stripped her of any right to join in state decisions, locking her away in rooms lined with magnificent tapestries, a prisoner in her own palace. Joanna had thought she found an umbrella to shield her from the storm, only to realize she had leaped from one pit into a far deeper abyss. At night, she listened to the waves outside her window, as if the tide itself mocked her, a queen who could not even rule her own life. Louis's reign was brutal and short. He declined and fell, while Joanna watched with cold, silent indifference. During this era, the court of Naples was filled with a dark, melancholic beauty, luxurious silk and rotten politics existing side by side. Joanna learned to gather her strength in silence, secretly building bonds with nobles who truly remained loyal to her. She realized that in this male-dominated age, her beauty was a weapon, but it could also become her tomb. To survive within the cracks of power, she had to become colder, harder, than any man around her. After Naples fell, the famous accusation of husband murder was finally brought before the Pope in Avignon. All eyes in the world were fixed on Joanna I. She stood alone before the judgment, like a lily blooming fiercely amid flames. She delivered a defense speech in Latin that would go down in history, steady in voice, precise in logic, and heartbreakingly moving in its sorrow. She was not only defending her own life, but also the sovereignty of Naples, and the dignity of a female ruler in a world that refused to respect her. The Pope was moved by her grace and intelligence, or perhaps the Church simply needed a stable Naples to maintain balance across the Mediterranean. She was declared innocent. In that moment, sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the Gothic church, falling gently upon her pale face. But this new freedom was not free. She was forced to transfer sovereignty over Avignon to the church at a humiliatingly low price, a silent bargain for her acquittal. She returned to Naples, where crowds lined the streets cheering. Yet her heart had turned as cold and unyielding as marble. She began to rebuild her kingdom, supporting early Renaissance artists, trying to cover the bloodstains of her past with the light of culture. Still, she had no legitimate heir, a fatal flaw that condemned her to a lifelong, endless race for survival. The arrival of her third husband, James III of Majorca, was little more than a brief, almost absurd interlude. He was an unstable, exiled man, and in this marriage, Joanna played the part of nothing more than a tired, weary caretaker. When Joanna I entered her later years, she had become a ruler of great authority, deeply loved by her people. For the final time, she put on a wedding dress and married Otto, a brave mercenary commander, perhaps the only marriage in her life that brought her even a faint glimmer of warmth. Otto was loyal, strong, and did not see seizing her crown as his only purpose. For a short while, he gave her the quiet comfort of an ordinary life, yet history never granted this woman much respite. The papal crisis of the Great Schism dragged her into an even deeper whirlpool. Having backed the losing side in the election of the Pope, the new pontiff stripped her of her throne and declared her a heretic. Charles, once like an adopted son to her, betrayed the queen who had raised him, all for the sake of power. Joanna was besieged in Castel Sant'Elmo, where the wind cut colder than it ever had before. She watched the armies that once swore loyalty to her turn against her beneath the walls. The last illusion of human loyalty in her heart shattered completely. She chose not to surrender in humiliation. Instead, she held fast to the final dignity of a queen, waiting quietly for the inevitable end. To eliminate all threat forever, Charles issued a cruel secret order: the queen should die in the very same way her first husband had. It was a cruel, fated cycle. On that stifling afternoon, the executioner carried a silken cord. Joanna closed her eyes. For the last time, she thought of that stormy night in Aversa, where everything had begun. When word of Joanna I's death spread, all of Naples fell into a deathly hush. People dared not mourn openly, yet in the quiet street corners at night, they lit tiny candles for the queen labeled of a murderess. She was buried in an unmarked tomb in the Basilica of Santa Chiara, with no magnificent epitaph, only dust settling in the cracks of stone bricks. Charles tried to erase every trace of her, only to discover she had already etched herself deeply into the laws and soul of the city. She remains one of the most contradictory figures of the Middle Ages, victim and ruler, sinner and saint. In distorted histories, she was painted as a promiscuous, heartless sorceress queen, but in the fragments of real records, we see a soul fighting to preserve her last shred of dignity, trapped between violence and a male-dominated world. Her life was a chain of 4 marriages, and a long, lonely battle for survival along the shores of Naples. The rumors of the Golden Cord would forever remain an unsolvable mystery in the river of time. Yet the castle still stands, watching the rise and fall of every ruler, just as the sea wind never stopped blowing that night. Joanna I is no longer merely a symbol. She is a quiet whisper of survival, power, and loneliness. Her story ends in stillness, yet it is reborn every night someone tries to understand her. The story of Joanna I slowly sinks beneath the rolling waves of Naples. She once said that the crown was golden, yet upon her head it felt like a cold iron ring, never once giving her true warmth. Tonight, we have walked through those dark corridors, and seen the lonely silhouette of a woman who struggled her entire life amid political schemes and loveless marriages. The truth may have long vanished into time, but her longing for freedom and her resistance against fate still touch our hearts. As you listen now, can you find within that foreign, melancholic atmosphere a peace and vastness fitting for this late hour? The softly flickering fire has burned down. This old story, which needs no effort to remember, will slip into your dreams beneath the moonlight. May you dream of the purest sunlight over Naples, of a girl who has taken off her crown and walks freely upon the sand. Good night. May you have a peaceful, deep, and sweet sleep.